Hi students, and welcome to your virtual museum for the Holocaust mini unit within our World War II unit. And so I wanted to start by providing you a letter that I wrote, an introduction to this virtual museum. Read along with me. In this virtual museum, you will go through a series of 8 exhibits organized by major events leading to the Holocaust, what happened during the Holocaust, and the devastation that followed, all during the 1930s and 40s. To start, Adolf Hitler outlined in his book Mein Kampf that he desired to rid Europe of the Jewish population along with other undesirables. He knew, however, that the German people would not openly follow his desires. He had to slowly erode their humanity before the German population would ever accept such an extreme proposition. As Hitlers and the Nazis began their process, they slowly excluded Jews from various professions and economic prosperity. From there, laws were passed that stripped Jews of German citizenship and made the intermarriage of Jews and non-Jews illegal. These Nuremberg laws, as they were called, slowly chipped away at the Jewish population's humanity and established them as second-class citizens. Once this dehumanization was established, through ruthless yet effective propaganda, Hitler and his Nazi party, run on the ground by his cruel and punishing police force called the SS, were free to institute what they referred to as the final solution to the Jewish problem, or a systematic elimination of an entire race. Such a massive undertaking required enormous logistical coordination that included relocating Jews to ghettos, work camps, and then eventually death camps. He chose his sadistic project of attempting to eliminate the Jewish population of Europe, often over decisions that may have affected the outcome of World War II. When World War II finally came to an end in 1945 and the concentration camps were liberated, the nightmare had come to an end for the survivors. At the end of Hitler's final solution, over 11 million people were dead, including 6 million of Europe's Jewish population. Such a catastrophic event could have never been imagined until it had taken place. As one survivor in one of the exhibits reminds us, the Holocaust is important to commemorate at the 75-year mark, but it must also be commemorated in 100, 125, and 150 years, etc. The Holocaust must be remembered so that it will never happen again. So we're going to go through some notes and some lecture during class, yet in those classes, the lecture is going to be kind of the background and the content, but then I'm going to let you explore some things that happened during the Holocaust that we may not have time to get through in class or that you'd prefer to look at on your own when I let you. So you'll go through this, this PowerPoint that is linked to Schoology, and when you get to this point, you'll click on the virtual museum. Okay, I would view this as a slideshow. There are 8 exhibits. Hitler begins, his rise to power, the final solution begins, the relocation to the ghettos, concentration camps, mass exterminations, liberation, and finally the aftermath and legacy. Okay, so again, I would view it as a slideshow. And here's how this works. On a day we do Exhibit 1, or we do some background of Hitler, which will be today or the next class period whenever we're starting, you'll see this background picture, and this is the cover of Mein Kampf. This is Hitler's book. What I'd like you to get familiar with, though, is I have included some other hyperlinks that will take you to some further information for investigation. Okay, so the plus icons are little text snippets that I've written there that, Hitler just believed that the Aryan race, the German race, was the master race and destined to rule. He wrote the book in prison after trying to overthrow the government in what is known as the Beer Hall Putsch. And there is some links here to further go in there. So here's some famous quotes from Mein Kampf and some just very initial ways he got power. I've got some pictures and then a video linked. When you move on to Exhibit 2, this one's called Hitler's Rise to Power. After he's, kind of disenfranchised from the loss of the Germans in World War I, he kind of is, and he's very, he's a good speaker. People are drawn to him, and so he starts to get this power. And then this one, you'll see some videos, some actual primary footage, him actually speaking to a crowd in 1936, and you can just see the energy he brings and the fervor and just this blind dedication that they have to this man. And so I want you to look at that one. Some more pictures, okay, a couple other videos, another one about him gaining power. I have one of them in which he actually takes power and he's actually signing some documents as he becomes the Chancellor of Germany. Some more text snippets and of course some articles that I'd like you to read. In the next one, Hitler, this one's called The Final Solution Begins, when he's now assumed enough power that he can start to take apart the Jewish population and start his reign of terror. You know this Nazi symbol as the swastika, and for us, we think of it as hatred towards certain races or people. Evil, we think of the Holocaust, we think of death, we think of just ruthless policing. But I do have an article here linked that actually talks about the Nazi swastika. We're not going to get to that in class, so I want you to read that article when you go through this museum, or this exhibit in the museum. Another article I have is about the foundation of the SS, his police force, Hitler's police force in Germany. He didn't just come to power and rule by himself. He had to finally, make a group of people kind of come with him to run all the evil that he wanted to inflict upon the Jewish people. The videos I have linked here are some propaganda against the Jews, some posters, another speech from Hitler, and some pictures I'll let you look at. Don't forget the text snippets. Finally, as we move on into Exhibit 4, the Jews were relocated to ghettos. Okay, so walled off portions of the city. Again, we'll get to this in class when we talk about this during lecture. Text snippets, some pictures of the ghettos, and so people were crammed in these Jewish people were crammed into just small walled off portions of the city, and it was meant to dehumanize them and make them feel like they were like in a cage, and that they weren't worthy to be in the German city. They were only allowed to be in this one part. So again, I've got some pictures, I've got some linked articles, the history behind the ghettos and some of the more popular ones, and then a survivor recounts life in Warsaw, one of the ghettos. Some text snippets, and then I have a video, again, another survivor recounting the experience within the ghettos. Many of these people, most of them were then moved to concentration camps where they died or worked, and so it began here, all right? So think about that. The next exhibit in the museum is the concentration camps. Here's an iconic photo taken. You can see how many men are packed into this barrack. This is where they slept. You can see they're sleeping on their bowls, and they're, of course, not given much food or water. Disease ran rampant within the concentration camps. Again, we'll talk about all this on the days we lecture. But as you explore this, make sure you're reading the text snippets, you're checking out the pictures, and reading some of the articles and videos. Here's a survivor returning to Auschwitz on the 75th anniversary. This is one of my favorite ones. This is a drone flying over the Auschwitz concentration camp today. It's kind of interesting to just see the landscape, the buildings, and just get that aerial view. I think you're going to enjoy that video. All these videos are really short, shouldn't take you much time. Articles, The Killing Machine, I like the title of this one. A brief overview of the timelines of the camps and the kinds that existed. This is a modern connection to today. When we get to this class period, you'll see kind of the standard or the objective of the day is to think about some connections between, what we're doing in 2020 and what happened in the 1930s and 40s. And one of these is a comparison to the pandemic and how the pandemic is taking a toll on the survivors from the Holocaust. And so I want you to check that out. Went through that one. Okay, and then some text snippets. There's one more up here. This one's a positive one about how prisoners made music in concentration camps and how those tapes, those recordings are actually being discovered and played again. Really a hard picture to look at, and I've included a couple other pictures that are going to be kind of interesting for you to look at and emotional. We know, and you will know, about how people were killed, how the Jews were killed on a large scale and then burned. Their bodies were burned or buried in mass graves. So what I have for you are, of course, some text snippets, obviously some pictures. I have a video just about the concentration camp and how it systematically worked. I have a first-hand account of the death chambers from a witness. I have an article here called The Life of a Guard, and so this guard, after the Holocaust ended, got off, he got off without any punishment. He was actually found as a 94-year-old and put on trial for his involvement in the Holocaust. And so he talks about what it was like to work and kind of blindly follow Hitler during this time and his plans. And then another article there along with some pictures. All right, your 7th exhibit will be Liberation, when the American and Soviet troops liberated the camps. Obviously a huge celebration. I like the American flag here, and all of these prisoners are, their demeanor has changed greatly now that they see American troops coming in to help them. I've got some great pictures, some iconic photos of children celebrating as they are able to leave the camps. The articles I have posted on this one, just some numbers. Auschwitz and Birkenau, I tend to focus on this one because it's where the most amount of Jews died. And so it just kind of gives you a look at the biggest concentration camp. This one's interesting. It talks about what the world knew at the time and what they did and did not do to help the Jews and the other people who were imprisoned there. Were they complicit? Did they know what was going on, and did they just willingly turn a blind eye? So we'll start this conversation in class. You can be enhanced by that article. The videos I have here, a survivor discusses what it was like to be liberated, and what that day, what he heard, and how it all happened that day. Some pictures, some text snippets, and then one of the more haunting things I think when we talk about the liberation of the concentration camps is that the troops who were liberating them forced the German people to walk through the camps and look at all the piles of dead bodies and to see their reactions. Some of them have less extreme reactions because they truly do believe that Jews are evil, and they hadn't stopped that image in their heads, and others are just absolutely horrified that they didn't know this was going on, or they did and didn't do anything to stop it. There's some really, really graphic videos out there. I chose one that was not so graphic. Of course, being a good researcher, being a good historian, is to look at those other primary sources, real footage of Germans walking through the camps. This one's a little bit toned down, but there are some other ones out there that are difficult for even us to watch as Germans walk through the camps. And then finally, the aftermath and legacy. This is a statue in Miami Beach that has, it's very symbolic of the struggle of the Jews. And so again, some pictures, some text snippets, the articles I have in here. One of the ones that I put in here, again, we're trying to make connections to today. As many of you know, or will now know on the day that we do this in class, is that there are statues of Confederate generals in the South of America being torn down. And because they represent hate, they represented men who hated other races. And so this article talks about should we do that, and do we tear down statues of Hitler because it means the same thing, or does it? So just a comparison today, and we'll have some good discussion on that in class after you read that article. The videos I have, a survivor recalls life after and how it was actually quite difficult to go home to Germany and their towns when people still hated them and thought that they didn't belong and thought that they actually had been dealt with. Also, so many survivors died after liberation. They went home and died in their homes in the weeks and months that followed. So I've got some articles on that too. So the legacy of the Holocaust, I'd like you to read that. And then the Holocaust Museum, we'll do something with this in class. When you get here, you're just going to pop around the museum and find some other things that might be relevant to you or that we may have missed in class, or the Holocaust Museum website can provide you some more information with. Okay, text snippets and pictures as always. I hope you enjoy this virtual museum. Again, this is to supplement what we'll be doing in class, but it's a good way for you to kind of be independently in charge of your learning, and you get to go in whatever order you want. You get to take as much time as you need as we work through these exhibits in class. Enjoy and reach out for questions.